Now let's look at the country specific corporate data model. So this is the country specific corporate data model. It is configured as per the different countries. So let's look at the USA. So for the USA, the first HRIS element which is configured is address, corporate address. So you can see this corporate address is similar to what we see it in the location object here. So if you see the first thing is country and then address line 1. So it says first is country ID USA and then address line 1. In the second HRIS field is address line 2, the same address line 2, then address line 3 is the third field, then address line 3 is the third field, and all these things will remain same, the maximum length, address and visibility. So for example, for USA I don't want that visibility address line 3 to be visible, so I will say visibility as none. Visibility as none here, and I will save this, and I will import this in a bit, and then we will just also check the other HRIS field. So other HRIS field is city. So if you see this, then next is city, then county. The next HRIS field is county, county here. Then the other field, the next HRIS field is state, state, then province and zip. So let's look at the province. This is the province field. And then we have zip. And there is another field which is country, and this country is coming as on the top as USA. Okay, so this is the country specific field, country specific corporate data model. Let me just import this data model into the system. So I will go here and I will go to import, export, export country specific XML, and now I will say import. I will browse the country specific data model, open, and I will import it. It says country specific XML for corporate data model has been uploaded successfully. Now let's look at the manage, org, pay and job structure and the location object. The address line 3 should not be there. Location, it is still appearing, so let's look at why it is appearing here. For country, address line 3, we have made it, so probably we have not loaded the correct version of the so let me load this correctly. Okay, one more time. I have not loaded the correct version, that's why. So this is how you can make errors, so you should always give the versions while working on it. So let me check here. Import, manage, or pay job structures, and I will say location. I will select 9999. And do you see that address line 3 is not visible here. So earlier I think earlier we have worked on the location. We have introduced a new field called test field, and then we have hidden that field from the location object. Now we have hidden the address line 3. So this is how this XML works. So now the next thing is the succession data model. There are two ways to approach the succession data model. The first is through the provisioning. You can always go to the provisioning and download, import and export that succession data model in the same way we did it here in the instance. And the other way of managing the succession data model is manage business configuration. Manage business configuration. So this is nothing but the succession data model, and you can see the different HRIS elements here. So these are the different HRIS elements of the succession data model, which you see it in the succession data model. This is a UI view of succession data model. You can create a field, you can change the field, you can make the visible and non-visible, you can enable the field, you can make it mandatory, non-mandatory. All these activities can be done through here. You don't actually need to go to XML to perform these activities. So do let's create a new field. Let's look at this HRIS element first, and then we will create a new field. So these are the different HRIS elements you can see on the left side. So the compensation comp info. So comp info is basically it will store the data related to compensation. Then we have email info. The email info is nothing but it will store the data related to your email information. Emergency contact will store the data related to the emergency. Employment information will store the data related to your different dates like hire date, original hire date, vacation service date, etc. Then global info will store the data related to your global information. Global information is basically your ethnicity information. That information will be stored here. Home address will store the information related to addresses. So for example, your address and address related fields. Then job information will hold the data for the job related job related information. Then job relationship will hold the data like what are the relationships within the job. For example, HR manager, matrix manager, all that relationship will be holded in the job relationship information. National ID will hold the information related to your national ID like your SSN, your SIN, etc. Pay component recurring will hold the information related to your pay component recurring, like recurring payments. Pay component non-recurring will hold the information related to one-time payments. Payment information will hold the information related to payment. Then personal information will hold the information related to personal like first name, last name, etc. Person info will hold the information um, related to your person ID. Let's look at, yeah, it is a bit slow. So it will hold the information related to your person ID, date of birth, country of birth name, etc. Phone information will have the information related to your phone ID. So these are the most commonly used HRIS elements within the Employee Central Core core. So during the implementation, we often use these HRIS elements. Others are used. Work permit info is also used. So work permit info is also there, but others are used less. But these are the most commonly used or most frequently used HRIS elements within the Employee Central. Then you have employee profile. So all the fields related to employee profile will come here in the standard elements. So these are the different 15 fields, custom fields, which you can define it for the standard elements. So we can define it here. Then there are different filters which We will be covering it in detail, but there are different filters which you can define it here, and you can work with these filters. So we will go in detail of this. So let's look at the comp info first. So comp info, if you click on comp info, it will show the comp info compensation information. On the top you can see the identifier. This is the identifier of the compensation, that this is the HRIS element of compensation information. Label compensation information, default label compensation information, whether enabled or disabled. You can enable or disable it from here. So this is enabled, and this is also enabled for onboarding. Then these are the different fields which are defined for the compensation information. So you can see, for example, job level is enabled, it is not enabled, it is disabled, and it is not mandatory. Pay type is disabled, notes is disabled, sequence number is disabled, but pay group is enabled and as well as mandatory. Is eligible for benefit is enabled but non-mandatory. So similarly, all other fields are defined here, and there are some custom fields as well. You can say annualized salary, change, current salary, new salary, percentage, etc. You can see it here. So these are the different fields. If you click on any of the field and go to details, it will show you the different other elements of a field, like enabled, mandatory. This is till this we have seen. Default label, what will be the label of the field, what is the data type, type of reference object, whether it is a pick list, it is a foundation object, or it is an employee, what is the reference object. If it is a pick list or foundation object, you will define the reference object here. Sorry, if it is a pick list, you will define the pick list values here, and if it is a foundation object, you will define the reference object here. Then visibility, edit or view is masked. Whether it is a sensitive field, then you can mask this field, etc. Then you can also define some other fields here. You can also define the HRIS sync mappings here on this one, and besides that you can also define some rules related to the particular. If there is any rule which you want to define it on this field, you can define on this particular field. You can say on change rule, and you can select the rule ID here and then say done. So similarly, you can define the on change rule on a particular field, and apart from that you can define different other rules. These are the on save rules. So on save and on view and on INIT rules. These you can define it here. So compensation, you can define the base object of the rule, even type, on save or on view or on INIT, and the rule name, and enabled or disabled as yes or no. So I can disable this rule by just simply clicking on this and I say no, then this rule will be disabled, and then I can save this record. So this is how the compensation information is defined. Now let's look at the one employee. So I will go to say Adam Novak. So these fields on the compensation information. So let's go to the compensation information here in the comp. So these fields will appear in the order you have defined in this business configuration. So for example, you can change the order as well. So for example, make correction. When you go to make correction, these are the arrows, you can define it. So for example, right now the pay group is the first field. So let's see. So if you see, the pay group is the first field. These are the system defined field: comp ratio and range penetration and annualized salary. So this is the pay group is the first field which is coming. Then is eligible for benefit, and if you see here, is eligible for benefit, is eligible for car, benefit rate, comp ratio, range penetration, payroll system ID, payroll ID, FLSA status, all this is defined. So you can change the sequence of these fields. So for example, I want to make the pay group little lower than is eligible for benefits, and I will just save this. Now I will refresh this data for Adam Novak. I will go to compensation here, and in compensation you can see that his benefit is eligible for benefit is coming first than the pay group. So likewise you can define it in the you can define the sequence of the fields, you can make them mandatory. You can also define the visibility here, like visible yes or no, read or edit access. You can define this. You can mask the field if required. So this is how you define a fields in the manage business configuration. This works for all the HRIS elements. So now we will look at how to define a custom field. So let's go to the easiest one, the personal info. So we will cover all these portlets in detail, but let's look at the personal info first. So these are the different fields in the personal info. So I want to define a custom field. So let's look at the personal info here. So in the personal info will be in the me section, and personal info. This is the section, and I will say show more. So you can see all the fields available for this particular employee. So you can see first name, last name, middle name, salutation, preferred name, gender, marital status, nationality, preferred language, and attachment is the field. Now I want to create a one custom field here. So I will go to no selection here. I will select the custom string here.